Hey there. Welcome back to Nothing But Anime. It's time for part 8 of our What If Deku Had Powerful Weapon Quirk series. If you're having fun with the content, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Let's jump right in and see what happens next. Tenya looked down at his costume's helmet in his hands. The sound of knocking caused him to glance up, seeing Manuel standing in the doorway to the agency's changing rooms. You all right there, kid? You've been staring at your helmet for a good 5 minutes. We're almost late for patrol. Tenya balked. Apologies, sir. I was just lost in my thoughts. Manuel shrugged. Don't blame you. Happens to the best of us. But seriously, get it in gear. The hero left, and Tenya sighed, before looking down at his helmet again. His resolve hardened, and he turned it around, laying it on his head. I promise, brother. The villain who ended your career will not walk the streets once I am done. Fumikage stood before Hawk's desk. Sir, the point of this internship is so that I can learn how to be a hero from a professional. The hero waved a drumstick of fried chicken dismissively. And you are. I've taken you on patrol, right? Fumikage huffed. That barely qualifies, sir. It is hard for me to learn from my mentor when he is constantly 2 blocks away. You are not teaching me how to be a hero. If anything, you are teaching me how to be a sidekick. I need to learn how to handle villains myself. Hawk swallowed his bite of chicken and leaned forward with a spark of interest in his eyes. On the topic of villains, I heard your class got attacked by a bunch of them a few weeks ago. Must have been scary, huh? Fumikage scowled. I do not see why that is any of your concern. Hawks held his hands up defensively. Hey, whoa. A bird can't see if his chick's doing all right after a traumatic experience? Fumikage crossed his arms. Most birds actually care for their chicks while the young are still in the nest. You, meanwhile, are effectively kicking me out of the tree before I've even left my egg. Hawks shrugged. Whatever. Point is, I heard that the League is bad news, so I wanted to be prepared if they ever showed up again. Happy? Fumikage frowned. It seems as though you are more concerned with learning about the actions of the League than you are with actually giving your intern useful advice. I am sure Principal Nedzu would not be pleased to hear that you had sent a student an internship offer solely as a means of acquiring information, especially when he could have given you said information himself. Hawks shuddered, but Fumikage could tell that it was exaggerated. The rat scares me. Okay? I'm not brave enough to talk to him in person. Fumikage shook his head in disappointment. And I thought hawks were a rat's natural predator. You're a disgrace to avians the world over, sir. He turned on his heel and marched towards the door of the office. If you will not give me a proper internship experience, then I will get one of your sidekicks to take me on a proper patrol, one where I can actually watch a pro in action. Dark Shadow popped out from under his cloak and blew a raspberry at the hero as they left. He's no fun, Fumikage hummed. Though, it seems he is constantly putting up a facade of bravado. Permanent actor, stuck in character. How intriguing. Tamura turned over his PlayStation controller in his hands as one of Kurogiri's warps swirled into existence, and Stain walked through into the bar. The mist man coalesced behind the bar, immediately pulling out an empty glass and a clean rag. The hero killer scanned his surroundings with a critical eye. Well, this isn't the best of first impressions. If you want me to join your group, you aren't doing a very good job of convincing me so far. Tamura shrugged. Makes sense to keep your better cards close to your chest. Start small, then work your way up until the other player accepts the trade offer. Only give as much as you need, so that you aren't wasting your best items. Stain raised an eyebrow. You're smarter than the rumors give you credit for. I'd heard that you had the temperament of a toddler with the resources of a king. Tamura huffed. I figured I'd put more points into my intelligence stat. Stain crossed his arms. Very well. What is the purpose of this meeting? Make it quick. I have work to do. Tamura sighed. So pushy. Fine. I was hoping that you and I could work out a deal. We'd get to borrow your rep and call you in for the occasional mission. In return, you'd get access to our resources. The hero killer raised an eyebrow. Such as Kurogiri's portals, backup Nomu in the event you take on a hero too tough to handle solo, and living quarters that aren't old apartments in the slums of whatever city you're working in. We've got water, electricity, heat, food, even Wi-Fi. Certainly would make it easier to keep tabs on corrupt heroes. Yeah. Stain hummed. You make good points. But why make this offer? Simple. I'm sure you've noticed that business isn't exactly booming right now. Long story short, we're low on manpower. That's where your rep comes in. You probably haven't noticed with how you've been living, but word spreads in the underworld when a single person has successfully killed dozens of heroes without being caught. You've got a following, hero killer. People idolize you. And if you're associated with the League, then that means more manpower for both of us. After all, the more people who share your vision, the wider you can spread your message. Stain narrowed his eyes. I will bear this task alone. If others wish to join me, that is their own prerogative, but I will not ask anyone to shoulder this burden alongside me. Tamura shrugged, palms up. Whatever. You don't have to ask them. I'm just saying that they'd be available if you did want their help. Of course, that's all assuming that you're willing to join. Stain huffed. I suppose your offer presents several advantages and few disadvantages. However, something doesn't add up. You offered the potential assistance of the Nomu, yes? But it seems that neither you nor the bartender have the capabilities to produce them. What are you not telling me? After all, if we are to have a working relationship, we must be open with each other. Tamura glanced over at the TV in the corner, mentally swearing when he saw the light on. That information is classified to non-members. If you prove your allegiance to me, then I might tell you. The hero killer scoffed. Then we have nothing more to discuss. Bring me back to Hosu. I still have business there. Tamura sighed. Fine. Kurogiri, take him back. The bartender nodded. Of course. Shigaraki Tamura. Katsuki grunted as he slammed a thug's face into a nearby wall. You know, most heroes wouldn't take first-year interns to a drug bust. Maruko laughed as she drop-kicked another thug, sending the guy flying through one of the top windows of the warehouse. I'm not most heroes. Uraraka groaned as she flipped a guy over her shoulder and slammed him into the ground. I think we knew that, considering the first thing you did was beat the shit out of us. Maruko snorted and dropped another thug with an axe kick. Hey, that was necessary to segue into training. And it worked, didn't it? Uraraka sighed, before jumping to the side to avoid a thug's swinging bat. She hit the wall on all fours and bounced off, flying through the air and bringing the dude to the ground with a perfect jumping cutter. Fair enough. At least now I'm not going feral every time I fight someone, which is a huge plus. Katsuki pivoted on his heel and delivered an uppercut to the jaw of the thug behind him, sending the poor soul flying through the roof of the warehouse. Not what I first thought this internship would be like. But you don't see me complaining. Maruko laughed and punched a thug through a window. That's the spirit, Kit. Static filled the air, and Katsuki paused. Shit, Uravity, you feel that? The girl nodded, glancing around as she settled into a combative stance. Maruko frowned and sniffed the air. What, the static? The city's crawling with electrical shit, so you're bound to get a lot of that. Katsuki shook his head. This is a different kind of static. You don't forget how something feels when you've pinned it down by the neck brace for a good 2 minutes. This is the same feeling as the warp bastard from the USJ. Maruko swore under her breath. What did they say his name was? Kurogiri? Or some shit like that? Katsuki shrugged. I don't fucking know. Izuku was the one who actually heard the names. All I know is that he's a slippery bastard and a pain in the ass. Uraraka huffed as she backflipped to land behind another thug, quickly yanking the knife from his hand and pinning him to the ground. Ground Zero, you know better than either of us how to deal with that guy. We've got these guys handled. Go! Tamura grunted as he stepped out of the portal onto the top of a water tower, overlooking the bustling lights of Hosu below. Charming place, isn't it? Stain huffed, crouched on the edge of the roof. It is rotten, infected by a disease. I still have yet to cull it here. My work will continue until all of Japan's heroes learn to save people over their own pathetic careers. Tamura raised an eyebrow. Really? Your goal is to make the heroes do their jobs better. Stain scowled. Society is filled with fakes and frauds, seeking the profession out of a lust for fame and fortune. I will destroy those who sully the title of hero, making way for a more just society. Tamura clapped slowly. Magnificent speech, truly. Shame you haven't buffed your charisma stat to match. Ever considered saying that to a hero and letting them live to pass on the message? Stain scoffed. Of course. In every city I kill 3 heroes, then injure 1 more and let them live to tell the tale. And crime rates have fallen in the cities I have already purged. Tamura huffed. Aha. And did you ever stop to listen to what those survivors said about you? Stain paused. Elaborate. Tamura crossed his arms. I took the liberty of digging around the internet and found an interview with one of your survivors. Remember Muzutafu? Some guy called Slugger? Stain nodded slowly. Yes. What about him? A couple days after you attacked him, he appeared on Hero News Nightly for an interview. You know what he said? Stain is a crazed monster. Nobody knows why he goes after heroes specifically, or why he only leaves some alive while killing others. It's nuts. I just barely managed to hit a home run and get my butt out of there alive. Does that sound like the words of a man spreading your message? Stain scowled. That utter fool. Did he even listen to me? I spent a solid 2 minutes explaining my vision. Tamura nodded. And he's not alone. Pretty much every hero who's survived has reported something similar. The only hero you didn't kill who hasn't said anything yet is Ingenium. Stain winced. Ingenium was a mistake. He was not my target. In fact, he is one of the few who I could potentially see as a true hero. But he stood between me and my target, so I had to face him. For his altruism, I let him live and I made sure to tell him as such. Has he not mentioned our encounter yet? Tamura shook his head. You put the dude in a coma. He's not expected to wake up for another 2 weeks at minimum. Fans have been outraged, demanding that the commission crack down on you for daring to take their favorite hero off the field. And going off the fact that Maruko's in town, I'd say they're listening. Stain huffed. If they will not listen to words, then they will listen to force. Tamura raised an eyebrow. Really? You're sure they won't just double down and insist that you're a crazed lunatic who goes around killing heroes just because you can? Stain paused, before sighing. I hate to admit it, but you have a point. The heroes are stubborn to a fault. What would you do? Tamura grunted. It's probably rich coming from me, but what might work is if you actually toned it down. Find a hero and get them to sit still, but instead of grandstanding and talking at them, talk to them. Make sure they actually get why you're doing what you're doing. then it's more likely that they'll spread your message. And if one hero isn't enough, then keep doing it. Persistence gets you pretty far if done right. Stain grunted, before turning to face the city below. Talk to them, not at them. I think I can try that. He paused, before glancing back at Tamura. Do not think that this means I have accepted your deal. Until you are willing to be open with me, I refuse to work with you. The hero killer leaped off of the roof, landing on the building across the street and immediately running off towards his next objective. Tamura huffed, before a tingle ran down his spine. He immediately schooled his expression as Sensei appeared out of thin air. His life support mask settled firmly on his face. How frustrating. I had hoped that you would sway such an important piece to your side. I am disappointed, Tamura. Tamura scoffed. Evidently, my charisma stat wasn't high enough. I'll need to dump more points into it if I want to recruit more units later. Sensei chuckled, before scanning the city. The thought comes to mind that one does not necessarily need the cooperation of another villain to be associated with said villain. Tamura huffed. You're saying that if we made an action during the same turn as the hero killer, then the NPCs would assume that we're in the same party, right? Sensei chuckled warmly. Precisely. How you choose to act is up to you. But know that I will support whatever action you take. The supervillain disappeared, and Tamura let out a brief sigh of relief. Kurogiri, send word to the doctor that we need 3 low-tier nomas. I think a little chaos would make Sensei happy, wouldn't you? Tenya glanced up as screams echoed from the commercial district of Hosu. Manuel took off and Tenya was quick to follow, slipping his helmet over his head as he ran. Sir, what's happening? I don't know, kid. But screams are never good when it's not Halloween. Be ready for anything. Tenya could see a low orange light over the rooftops, and it was steadily growing. He could just barely make out multiple columns of smoke rising above. Sir, it would seem that the city is on fire. Manuel removed a hand from his earpiece. It's worse than that. We've got 3 unknown villains causing chaos in the commercial district. We need to move. Tenya's brain froze. Chaos. In the chaos, the hero killer will surely attempt to take another life while the other heroes are distracted. This is my chance. He quickly darted off into a side alley, weaving around dumpsters and trash bags as he ran through Hosu. It only took him a few minutes to notice the glint of light off of steel coming from another alley, and he darted to the entrance to see Stain kneeling by a dumpster, looking down at something on the ground. The hero killer glanced up, scowling at Tenya's sudden appearance. You are a child. Leave now. It is not your place to interfere. I cannot allow that. You will fall here and now, hero killer. Tenya sped forward, aiming a kick at the villain's face. At the last second, Stain leaned back and brought his foot up, tripping Tenya and causing him to careen into the wall at the other end of the alleyway. So brash and foolish. Do you really think that you, a mere student, would stand victorious against a seasoned killer? And without backup, no less. Tenya scowled, clambering to his feet as he noted that his helmet had been lost in the collision. I will bring you down, villain. For my brother. Stain raised an eyebrow. That armor, a fan of Ingenium, then? His younger brother. The hero killer clicked his tongue in disappointment. Tragic. I have no quarrel with you. Your brother's injuries were not my intention that day. I had sought another target, but Ingenium intervened, and I could not allow myself to be caught when my work was yet to be finished. Tenya snarled. Empty words from a crazed murderer. Your reign of terror ends now, hero killer. Stain stabbed his katana into the ground. Really? I thought that the first rule of heroics was to prioritize the rescue. If you truly wish to live up to your brother's legacy, then you should have rescued him first. He gestured to the wall of the alley, and Tenya's eyes narrowed when he saw the prone form of an underground hero leaning against a dumpster. You, get out of here. This is my fight. Stain scoffed, naive to assume that he is capable of moving. The hero glanced over at Tenya. Stain is right. I'm paralyzed from the neck down. Must be his quirk. Tenya was suddenly aware of a trickle of blood running down his right arm. He must have scratched me when he tripped me. Stain huffed at Tenya's expression, bringing a knife dripping with blood to his face. Your awareness is poor, child. Your brother would be disappointed with how slowly you noticed your wound. He licked the blade, and Tenya's muscles locked up. He collapsed to the floor of the alley, his eyes going wide. What did you do, villain? Stain huffed and wiped the blade of the knife with a piece of cloth, before resheathing it. My quirk, obviously. You can no longer move your body below your neck. The villain pulled his katana from the ground and strode forward, stopping in front of where Tenya laid. He knelt, looking the student in the eyes. Listen, and listen well, boy. Your brother's coma was a mistake. I would much rather have let him continue his career. I only fought him because he insisted on protecting my target, as a hero should. Tenya's mind froze. What? Stain sheathed his katana. The profession is diseased, corrupted by those who seek fame and fortune in favor of defending the civilians they have sworn to protect. People die every day because the closest hero was too busy posing for the cameras. There are those who bring honor to the profession, like your brother did, but they are far outshined by frauds. Tenya scowled. I will never listen to anything you say, villain. You ended my brother's career, and that is something I cannot forgive. Stain huffed. So stubborn. People like you who refuse to listen to reason are a majority of the problem. You are young, you still have the capacity to change. For now, I will let you live. But, if you cross paths with me as a full hero and still insist on taking revenge for your brother, then I will cut you down. The hero killer stood and strode to the entrance of the alleyway. When he reached the street, he paused and glanced back at the two figures lying in the alley. Be grateful that I left you alive to spread the word. Let the other heroes know should they pursue wealth and glory, should they disregard the lives of civilians in favor of attention. Then I will be there. I will wipe the stain of fake heroes from the earth so that true heroes may rise to save those who were abandoned. I will watch. I will judge. And I will cull those who disgrace the title of hero. The hero killer darted across the street, disappearing into the shadows of another alley. Rustling could be heard on the rooftops above, and there was a short beep. Bakugo dropped from the roof of an adjacent building, clad in his hero costume. Better get that recording to the police. Maybe they'll finally get a read on Stain. The blonde pocketed his phone and turned towards Tenya, placing a hand on his hip. But right now, my priority is you, Glasses. Mind telling me what the fuck you were thinking? Trying to take on the hero killer by yourself? Tenya bristled. He ended my brother's career. I could not sit back and let the heroes allow him to remain on the streets. Bakugo rolled his eyes. Nobody's saying that a killer should be allowed to roam free. What I asked is why you thought you had to be the one to do it, dumbass. The hero, who Tenya now recognized as native, huffed. I'd like to know the same thing. You're still just a student, you don't have nearly enough experience, skill, or power to take on an S-rank villain by yourself. You'd better be the exception in your class, or I'm putting in a complaint to Eraserhead. Bakugo scoffed. I'm doing that myself anyway. Consider yourself lucky if Sensei doesn't expel your ass for pulling this shit. He twitched, before raising a hand to his ear. Don't bother, Bunny. Stain's already gone, so coming to my location ain't gonna do shit. Go ahead and help Uravity finish up with those guys. I've got my own problems to handle over here. Chapter 26. Izuku's phone dinged, and he glanced over at where it was sitting in the corner of the gym. He immediately wished he hadn't, as Momo's bow staff slammed into his chest and sent him flying into the padded wall behind him. To her credit, the girl immediately went pale, dropped her staff and ran over, a worried expression on her face. Izuku-kun, are you alright? I thought you were paying attention. Izuku coughed and mentally checked himself over, sighing with relief at the lack of any broken bones. I was up until my phone dinged. I have it set to only notify me for texts from important contacts. Momo sighed. I see. Izuku jumped. Wait. I got a text from someone important. He quickly peeled himself off the wall and ran over to his phone, picking it up and opening the notification. Katsuki, the dumbass is alive. Laid up in a hospital bed for some minor scrapes and currently being lectured by Aizawa-sensei and Manuel, but otherwise okay. Attached was an image of Ida, laying in a hospital bed with his right arm in a sling. Momo glanced over Izuku's shoulder and sighed. I guess he did end up trying it after all. I suppose we should be grateful that nobody was killed. Izuku nodded. Especially after Hosu's destruction was all over the news last night. I was seriously scared that the others wouldn't make it through all right. Thankfully, the news this morning reported 0 fatalities and minimal casualties. Fat Gum huffed, and the two interns jumped at the hero's sudden presence behind them. Good to hear. Still, that was a pretty dumb move by your classmate. Izuku nodded. Yeah, Ingenium's his older brother, so he was kind of focused on getting revenge, near as I can tell. Fat Gum winced. Yikes, he's lucky that Stain let him live. He was dangerous when he came through Esuha a couple months back. I never ran into him myself, but I heard plenty about him from the other heroes. Izuku glanced over at the TV in the corner of the gym, currently playing a news broadcast about the situation in Hosu the previous night. He's also lucky that Katsuki was nearby, especially considering that the other heroes were occupied by the hell that happened last night. Suddenly, the TV flickered, and the news broadcast cut to a live feed from a bar, with the hero killer sitting in full view. Greetings, Japan. Don't worry. This will only take a moment, and then you can get back to whatever it was that you were doing. Stain got up from the bar stool he was sitting on and placed his hands behind his back, looking into the camera. I believe it's safe to assume you've all heard of me at some point. Stain, the oh-so-infamous hero killer. In your eyes, a crazed murderer who targets heroes for reasons unknown. You may wonder why I do what I do. He spread his arms wide. Well, wonder no more. Consider this my manifesto. He stepped backwards and sat back down on the stool, crossing his legs and placing his hands on his knee. Heroes, a constant in our society, hailed as gods among men. However, not every pro-hero deserves the title. Before the advent of quirks, a hero was any person who helped another in need. Firefighters, police officers, paramedics, all of them were considered heroes. But in today's society, the term has become corrupted. A hero is no longer someone who saves another without expectation for reward. Today, a hero is one who uses their quirk to fight crime and gets paid for it. A hero is a showboat who seeks the limelight and ignores the suffering of others in the pursuit of fame and fortune. Izuku winced. Harsh but true. There's a lot of heroes who ignore crime-ridden areas in order to better find the cameras. Stain continued. It turns my stomach to think about how many people live in poverty and suffering, all because their precious heroes are too busy chasing cameras and scheduling interviews. True, there are those who do genuinely work for the betterment of the people. Present Mike, whose radio show is a beacon of hope in a sea of darkness. Ingenium, who once donated his profits to charities for the weak and downtrodden. All Might, who saves everyone around him with his sheer presence. But the few saviors are far outnumbered by the many glory hounds who chase attention and refuse to put their lives on the line. I once was like many of you, willing to sit on the sidelines, to wait for a hero to come and fix the problems in society. But now, I understand that a product of a broken society will not fix it. So I will step in. I will remove this blight on the world. To those who try their best, those who eschew glory to save as many as they can, rejoice, for I am your greatest ally. But to those who sit back, those who eschew danger to get as much attention as they can, beware, for I am your worst enemy. Stain stood up and strode forward, one hand drawing his katana. I will stain my hands with the blood of frauds until society recognizes its mistakes and works to correct them. And if they refuse, then I will strike them down, one by one, until those who remain will seek the betterment of the world. He made a slashing motion, and the camera feed cut out, quickly switching back to the news broadcast. The anchor was pale and silent, before the broadcast cut to a blank white screen. An automated voice said, "We are currently experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by." Tamura clapped slowly as Stain sheathed his katana, having not actually cut the camera. Magnificent. Truly, a speech for the ages. Stain huffed and sat down at the bar. I spoke nothing but the truth. Jiren chuckled and swept the camera off the table, quickly stashing it in one of his jacket's many pockets. The truth is often all you need. And Kurogiri was clearly in the background, so anyone who wants to join is going to flock to this place once they connect the dots. Tamura grinned. And you're going to give them the pen, yeah? Jiren snorted and headed towards the door. Only if I get paid. I expect my usual price within the week. The TV in the corner flickered on. Rest assured, broker. You will get your due. Jiren nodded and left, quietly closing the door behind him. Stain raised an eyebrow. And who might you be? Sensei chuckled. You may call me Sensei. I was the one who raised Tamura, and I will advise him and provide my resources until he proves that he no longer needs my guidance. The hero killer scoffed. So he was never the mastermind behind the league at all. Tamura quickly coughed. The party leader isn't always the strategist. Sensei gives me suggestions and advice, but he doesn't make the final decisions. Sensei chuckled. Precisely. If you have anything you wish to request, then go to Tamura. He is the head of the league, after all. The TV cut off, and Stain grunted, before glancing at Tamura. Something is amiss. He speaks with far too much authority to not be in command. Explain. Tamura huffed and stood up from his booth, heading towards the stairs that led to the rooms above. Let me show you to your room first. Stain raised an eyebrow but followed anyway. Tamura led the older villain up a single flight of stairs, before opening the first door on the right. He showed Stain into a room with a bed, a dresser, a desk, a chair, a computer, and a window that overlooked the street in front of the bar. Here's where you're staying. The thermostat is by the door if you need to change the temperature, the kitchen is at the end of the hall, and the bathroom is the last door on the left. The Wi-Fi is named Night Cloud Bar, no password, and you should get decent bandwidth up here. Stain scoffed. Not bad, I suppose. Tamura nodded. Best of all, it's private. No cameras like there are down in the bar. Stain raised an eyebrow and removed his various sheaths, leaning them against the wall before plopping on the bed. So, explain why your sensei seems to be in command, not you. Tamura sighed and shut the door, before pulling the chair out from under the desk and sitting down in it. Well, he is in charge. Sensei claims that I'm the leader, but he's the one making the plans. He and the doctor are always holed up in their secret headquarters plotting and making the Nomu, and I'm just the figurehead. Stain huffed. You do not seem pleased by that. Tamura shrugged. A while back I was, but then we attacked the USJ, and Player 2 gave me a fresh perspective. I realized that Sensei never gave me a choice, and kind of forced me into the whole villain thing. Stain grunted and glanced down at the floor. He's the rumored Quirk dealer, isn't he? Tamura's eyes widened. How'd you figure it out? Stain made a small noise of surprise and pointed at Tamura's bright red shoes. Your footwear. You wear Primordial shoes. Nearly everybody knows that Primordial is the only brand that makes footwear for Quirkless people, which has to be wider to accommodate the extra toe joint. And Primordial makes exclusively one style and one color of Quirkless footwear. It's a modern-day Star of David. Tamura scowled. So, with the toe joint, it's impossible to naturally develop a quirk as strong as yours. The only recorded cases are weak quirks such as changing one's eye color or extending one's fingernails by a couple inches. The only way for you to have both your quirk and the toe joint would be if it was given to you. Tamura huffed. Sure. Then explain how, when I was a kid, decay manifested without warning while I was sitting in my backyard. Stain scoffed. Is it so ridiculous to believe that your sensei did not possess some form of invisibility or illusion quirk at the time? Tamura opened his mouth to retort, then paused. Slowly, He reached into his shirt and removed the small embalmed paw he wore on a necklace. He turned it over in his hands, careful not to touch it with all 5 fingers. So, Sensei's the reason I have decay. Stain grunted. It would appear that way. So it's not my fault. Stain raised an eyebrow in confusion. Excuse me? Tamura started chuckling, tucking the paw back under his shirt. It was Sensei's fault the whole time. I wasn't the reason why they died, it was Sensei. He threw back his head and started cackling. He always was a manipulative bastard, wasn't he? Right from the beginning. He was just grooming me into a mindset of constant death and destruction. He removed the hand from his left wrist and stared down at it. Somehow, I believed that she wouldn't blame me. Tell me, Stain, do you believe in ghosts? In the afterlife? Do you think that the spirits of those close to you watch you from beyond the grave? Stain huffed. It would seem that I've stumbled upon something personal. I'd rather not be privy to the details. But what will you do with this new information? Tamura sighed and placed the embalmed hand back on his left wrist. For now, I'll play Sensei's game. I'll let him think I'm the pure DPS he wants me to be. But if the opportunity presents itself, then I'm going to break my code. Hard. He glanced up at the hero killer. What about you? Stain crossed his arms. I never trusted your organization all that much. I definitely don't trust your sensei. He smirked. But I might be willing to trust you. Kurogiri swirled into existence by the door of the room. I take it you have made your decision, Shigaraki Tamura? Tamura nodded, standing from the chair with a grin on his face. Yeah, I've chosen my route. Let's see where it takes us. Kurogiri hummed warmly. Something in me is proud of you. Hopefully, when this is all over, I will be able to learn what it is. The Monday after internships, Aizawa-sensei walked into the classroom and was met with complete silence. He glanced over at where Ochako was sitting, and she smiled, waving her sling-free right hand. He smirked warmly, before scanning the rest of the class. Well, you all came back from your internships intact. Good. Aoyama raised his hand and asked, Monsieur, where is Ida-kun? Izuku grunted, hopefully learning his lesson. Aizawa-sensei sighed. For your information, Ida is currently suspended for the week after his stunt during internships. Sue tilted her head curiously. Stunt, Karo? Izuku huffed. The idiot tried to go after Stain to get revenge for his brother. He's lucky the guy let him live. Aizawa-sensei nodded. Precisely. He'll be expected to submit an essay on the dangers of vigilantism and going after a villain without permission. But enough about him. With Stain's message hijacking every news channel last Thursday, villainous activity has been increasing steadily, with an emphasis on attacking hero agencies. As such, you're going to need to improve and fast. So don't expect us to go easy on you during training. Todoroki seemed to jerk slightly at the word, training. Glancing over at the two-toned boy, Izuku just barely noticed fresh bruises hidden underneath the other teen's uniform, along with what looked like a second-degree burn on the front of his throat. That looks painful. Where the heck did that burn come from? His worries only increased as time went on. Throughout morning classes, Todoroki was completely silent, throwing out rudimentary signs if he was ever called on, with Fumikage occasionally translating. The bird-headed boy had learned JSL after finding out that Kastuki's explosions were steadily making the blonde go deaf. When the bell rang for foundational heroics, All Might marched through the door with his trademark smile. Welcome back, 1A. Let's see how much you've grown during your internships. Throw on your costumes and head to the buses. Our destination is Ground Gamma. A few minutes later, Class 1A filed into the sprawling industrial complex. Thankfully, there was a raised platform by the entrance, with a screen displaying feeds from multiple cameras placed around the training ground. All Might boomed. Right, then, let's get straight into it. Today's lesson is a rescue race. Momo raised her hand. Sir, if today's subject is rescue, would it not be a better idea to use the USJ? All Might grinned wider. But the USJ is for natural disasters. Today, we're simulating something you're more likely to be doing as heroes. You will race in groups of 5, spaced around the edges of Ground Gamma. I will be positioned somewhere inside, and your goal is to reach me as fast as you possibly can. I will send up a flare to signal the start of each race. Any further questions? Izuku raised his hand. Is there going to be a group of 4? Since Ida isn't here? All Might nodded. That is correct. If that will be all, then these are the 4 groups. Group 1. Ashido, Kaminari, Kirishima, Bakugu, Ayama. Group 2. Ajui, Ojiro, Kuda, Shuji, Tokoyami. Group 3. Uraraka, Satu, Hagakure, Midoriya, Yaoyorozu. Group 4. Aoyama, Jairu, Shiro, Todoroki. It didn't end well. Group 1 had been as expected. Ashido climbed up and over the various pipes and towers by melting handholds and footholds with her acid. Kaminari and Kirishima just ran as fast as they could, though the redhead would occasionally harden his fingers and stab them into a wall to give himself a little extra height, making him slightly faster. Katsuki simply flew overhead with his explosions, easily getting to All Might first out of the group. Hitoshi had swung around the pipes using his capture scarf. Group 2 got creative. Tsu took hints from Hitoshi's performance and used her tongue as a mock grappling hook. Ojiro bounced from pipe to pipe off his tail, though he was slightly behind Tsu in terms of speed. Kuda summoned a tidal wave of rats and had them carry him through the twisted terrain, coming in just after Ojiro. Shuji, like Kaminari, just ran as fast as he could, though his developed leg muscles meant he was a good bit faster than the blonde. Fumikage, however, had ironically shined, using his abyssal shroud technique to swing from pipe to pipe, just barely outpacing Tsu. Group 3 had the closest three-way tie of the class. Ochako, Izuku, and Momo were among the fastest performances for the entire exercise. Ochako lightened her gravity and bounced around like a pinball, but with substantially more control than before. Izuku had manifested his extreme gear, bobbing and weaving around the pipes and towers. Momo had created shoes with incredibly powerful springs, bringing her up to Izuku's level of speed and reaching all might at about the same time as the other two. Poor Satu and Hagakure were left in the dust, forced to run on their own 2 feet. Izuku ended up claiming the victory. Group 4 was when things went south. As soon as the flare had gone up, Todoroki had unleashed a massive glacier that had devastated the entirety of Ground Gamma. Aoyama, Kyuka, and Shiro didn't even have a chance to move before they were frozen solid. Izuku had to fly over the frozen hellscape on his extreme gear and use a Momo-made flamethrower to free his classmates from their icy prison. The worst part was that Todoroki hadn't said a thing afterwards, walking off towards the main campus the second that Izuku dropped him at the entrance. Izuku frowned as he dropped to the ground, his extreme gear dissipating into thin air. What's his deal? I know overwhelming force is his usual MO, but he wasn't this harsh before, not even during the battle trials. What gives? Momo hummed. If memory serves, he chose to intern with Endeavor because, and I quote, "He's the only one who would actually teach me anything. I'm worried for him." Izuku scowled. And the burn on his throat doesn't make me feel any better. Something's not right here. There's no good reason a person should be that cold, ice quirk, or otherwise. And that's a wrap on part 8. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to check out the previous parts in the playlist if you haven't seen them yet. Trust me, you won't want to miss what led up to this moment. A huge shout out to the author for their incredible hard work. Show them some love and support for all the effort they've put into this amazing series. I'll be back soon with more, so stay tuned. And as always, thank you all for your continued support. You all rock.